2 weekends. And we had one guy, all he would ever do is shoot. He wouldn't give the ball up, he'd shoot. And we'd always say, pass the Dutchie. And the reason we said that was because back when we were playing, there was a big song called Pass the Dutchie by a band called Musical Youth. And from that band, Dennis Seaton and Michael Grant are here today. How you guys doing?
Well, thank you. Well, thanks for having us on your show.
Deja vu. People, if you don't know, my computer went out, so we're restarting. So.
They don't know that. You don't have to give that up.
I like to give it up so they know, what's going on. Now, I'd asked you earlier, okay, musically, how did it all get started? I know, Michael, tell your story.
Okay, so my mother wanted me to be a concert pianist. That was her dream. And I originally started off by playing the organ. So I was playing things like, Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach and stuff like that. And I was doing that up until the age of around 7 or 8, when my father brought home an album by this guy, you probably heard of him, called Bob Marley. Now, it was the Exodus album. And when I heard that album, I was like, wow, this is the first time I'd heard rhythmic organ. Because up until then, it was not rhythmic. It was just, you just played the organ. Although we'll debate about what's rhythm in a second. But the point being is that was a style that I've never heard. And so I really liked that. And I started playing that. And my mom got really upset with my dad. What have you done? What have you done? But anyway, so I started to play reggae. And still playing classical for my mom to keep her happy, but reggae just got into my blood. That was like the album that kind of changed me and changed my life into reggae. And so that's the beginning of my musical career, was hearing that Exodus album. And that's what, spurred me into going down the field of reggae and doing classical on the side, just to keep my mom happy.
Now, Dennis, what was your background in music?
So my background in music was from the age of 8 years old to about 10. I used to do theatre. Well, I say theatre, school productions. So the first one I ever did was Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, and I ended up singing all the parts. So I sang my part as well as the Pharaoh's part, because I was Joseph. But the Pharaoh couldn't sing, so I had to face the Pharaoh, and he had to mime, basically. So yeah. That's my background. But then Junior and Patrick, well, Junior was my best friend when we was on summer holidays like now. And he was my best friend. And he actually said to me that his dad was teaching him drums and Patrick was learning the bass. And I did ask him at the time, can I come and sing? And he said, well, I'll ask my dad. And he did, but I got chucked out.
Now, what do you mean you got chucked out?
Well, my claim to fame is that I went to the very first musical youth rehearsal, the very first one, which was at Offenham House, and 17 was the number. And Fred accused me of leaving some sweet rappers in the chair and said, don't come back to rehearsals again. So I had to stand outside every time. That was it.
So now, how did you end up? First of all, how did Musical Youth start? Because you mentioned earlier about the record and everything, but how did you guys get started as a band?
So as a band, basically, we used to just go play local places, clubs and whatever. And Freddie Waite was the lead singer at the time, which is Patrick and Junior's father, the guy that chucked Dennis out of the band originally. Anyways, yeah, so he was basically the lead singer, but people had seen the band and said you needed a younger singer. So Dennis, so what we did was we did our version of, you call it American Idol today. It was like a similar thing. We put together an audition, basically, and my mother made sandwiches and everything else. And we then went and said, okay, to all our school friends, and anybody would listen. There was no social media at the time, so it was basically very local. And said, look, we're holding auditions. Can you turn up for auditions and let's see who the lead singer will be? And so Dennis turned up to be the lead singer. He done his audition part and then left, and we were like, next. And no one else was there. That was it, one person. So there you go. By default, Dennis is the lead singer of Musical Youth. The rest of, as they say, is history. All history. Exactly.
Now, how did you guys first get the chance to record Pass the Dutchie? How did that come about?
Right. So it was actually a mistake. Was it a mistake? No, it wasn't a mistake. We were doing some live shows, and we were supporting Culture Club
before everybody knew Culture Club.
Hold on, real quick. Where were you doing live shows? Because you guys are kids. Like, I mean, where? I mean, it's not like you could like going to pubs. Like, hey, we're performing. Where were you guys doing?
Exactly. So we used to do what they call in the UK working men's clubs. So you would call it a kind of comedy club is where the musicians cut their teeth. You know, like pubs, but frequented by the community. So a lot of the I say a lot, quite a number of employers had clubs for their employees to go and socialise. So we used to play at the West Indian clubs around the country. So that's where we cut our teeth. And we were playing that upstairs at Ronnie's. That's right. Ronnie Scott's in London. And it had the smallest dressing room. Even us couldn't fit in there all together. So two of us could get changed, come out, then the other two would get changed. And I remember I was going across this walkway, going across the dance floor to the toilet. And I saw this guy sitting down. I thought it was a guy. And it looked, he had these long hair and his face was makeup. And I went back, I looked at him and, what? So I went and got the others. And I said, look at him, look at him over there. Anyway, turns out that guy that was looking at was Boy George. It was Boy George. And he'd seen us play upstairs at Ronnie Scott's and invited us to come and support Culture Club at Heaven. Yeah. Now, Heaven, we didn't find out until we got there, was the biggest gay club in London. And there was the place was absolutely packed. So the record company, the A&R guy came down and he came to the gig. And when we performed, because we used to perform it as Pass the Dutchie, which was the #1 reggae song by the Mighty Diamonds at the time. And the Dutchie pipe is a big old bong that the Rastafarians used to pass around. And when we played that song, the audience went absolutely ballistic. They went nuts. So the A&R guy sees this and says to us, you know that song Pass the Dutchie? Yeah. Is there any way you can change the lyric? And we looked at him and went, well, maybe. So what happened? Went to the studio. You want to take it over? All right. Cool. I'm enjoying it. Went to the studio. And back then, you used to do demos of your album for the record company to have a listen. I mean, it's a marketing thing, isn't it? So they know what they're selling. Anyway, so we recorded 7 songs from the first album, Youth of Today. And the 8th song was 2 versions of Pass the Dutchie. So the first one was Pass the Dutchie. We sang it as Pass the Dutchie. But then the second one, we just literally went in the control room and said, what are we going to change this lyric to? And we looked at each other, and I think it was our manager at the time. He said, well, we got the Dutch pot. Yeah. The Dutch pot. Yeah. And we said, Dutchie. And we just jumped up and down like, as kids do. Very excited. Yes, that's right. We changed it from Dutchie to Dutchie and just changed it to that.
Well, what made you guys first of all choose that song though? With the marijuana thing, because you're young kids. I mean, I know you like reggae. I know you like reggae, and that's fine. And that's only I smoked pot in high school. I understand. Yeah. But what made you choose that song? Because you probably knew the record was going to go, well, I don't know, we don't want these kids singing about ganja.
Yeah, but at the time, we were singing the biggest reggae, because we were like a covers band. So we were singing all of the biggest reggae covers at the time. So you couldn't be a covers band and not sing that song, because at that time that song was a big hit in reggae. You know what I'm saying, in terms of the reggae culture, whatever. So, and if you're doing cover versions or cover songs, it'd be like doing a set without doing a Taylor Swift. Or without doing a Beyonce track, or a Beatles track. Yeah. Those are the biggest hits at the time. And if you're going to try and entertain people, you're going to sing the biggest songs. And so that's the reason why we sung that song. And, and nobody would care unless you become successful, which is fortunately what happened. Kids can say whatever they want. It's only now you're successful. You're like, whoa, what are they singing about? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And also it helped too, because when we changed the words from Dutchie to Dutchie, it also, meant conversation started happening, because, some of the lyrics, how do you feel when you got no food, was fantastic. But, we're passing this Dutchie on the left-hand side, and we were explaining it's a cooking pot. But remember, people might have thought your cooking pot PLT, which is another name for marijuana. So
that's right.
There you go.
And Steve, when I found out over this side of the world, they thought we were singing about cooking pot.
Yeah, because the Dutchie is a cooking pot.
Cooking a smoking pot.
Right. Cooking pot.
It's a bong. They're talking about a bong.
That's right. Exactly. That's right.
So a Dutch pot, a Dutchie in for us as West Indians in the UK is a pot that we cook the food in.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but
exactly. So
totally different meaning.
So how does it end up on the radio? Because, how does it end up sitting there getting played? Because once again, you're young kids, you're a young black group. It's not very popular. I mean, it's not, people aren't used to it. And we'll get to that about MTV later, because you're the first black group to be on MTV, the video. Yeah, and so, right. How did you get on the radio? Because it was something that people aren't used to. And it's not like today where we'll try anything. Back then, in the 80s, I mean, we try to say the 80s was a great time, but there are some uptight son of a bitches. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
So what happened was, firstly, when I wasn't singing lead, the band recorded a single called Political in General, and that was at Salt the Music Workshop. And we had high unemployment at the time. There was 3 million unemployed. So, there wasn't much support for the arts. So Salt the Music Workshop and Barry Coleman recorded the band, sent the single into John Peel. Now, if you speak to any 80s artist, John Peel was the DJ.
Yes.
Even the lazy A&R guys would sit there, I call them lazy, they would sit there and listen to what John Peel would play, because John Peel played everything. He had autonomy over his show.
Yes.
Them days are gone.
Longer.
Right?
Longer.
So John Peel decides he's going to play Political in General. The A&R guy hears it, gets in touch, because he tells them the story about these 4 young guys. Anyway, so John Peel was the first, and then when we released the single, we're probably one of the only bands who did 2 John Peel sessions.
Yes.
One with Fred singing lead,
yes,
and the second with me singing lead. Right. So the support of John Peel gave us the credibility, because back in the 80s, you had to perform. There was no two ways about it. No. It wasn't, go and mime. You had to be able to perform. Right. Yeah. So John Peel paid them sessions. Then with some of the TV that we had, that helped push it. Mm-hmm. But as we said, there was only Radio 1, Radio 2, and local FM stations. Yeah. Well, it wasn't even FM then. It was medium wave.
And also, Radio 1 was so big because, again, it was the only station countrywide. Everyone else had a license for very small areas, so you couldn't go outside of maybe a 10-mile, maybe that radius. Do you know what I'm saying? Even the pirate stations couldn't go that big. You just didn't have a transmitter that big, and you couldn't bounce transmitters, obviously. Yeah. So when you got onto Radio 1, you were appealing to virtually the whole country. Yeah, whereas nowadays, because of the internet, you can appeal to the whole world, but we didn't have that at the time. Yeah. So therefore, getting onto Radio 1 was a big thing, which is why the DJs made so much money. Because if you could get your record to a DJ to play, then, so record companies were paying DJs thousands and thousands of dollars and all kinds of perks they used to get. Because obviously they had not worldwide, but nationwide. They could get your track nationwide. And if you got on a playlist, whoa, now you're talking. Do you know what I'm saying? Because they'd rotate it maybe. On the A list, you'd get like 5 times a day. On the B list, you'd be like twice a day or whatever. But so you wanted to get on their playlist, on that DJ's playlist, basically. It was a big thing then. It doesn't exist these days, but that was the thing.
Oh, yeah, it was the old payola. In America, it got shut down because it was payola. The problem was someone would come in with a few $100 and an 8-ball, and the DJ would play. That was the way it worked. Then they said it was all organized crime, and America was behind it. So it completely, in the States, it changed the whole record company. Now
that's right.
Now once Pastor Dutchie charted, what was it? How did it chart? What was the progression?
So it started off at 100. When we released it, it started off at 100 or something ridiculous like that, yeah? And we put it out, and we said, no, we're not going to say anything to anybody, because we didn't want to be embarrassed if it didn't go anywhere. You told everybody about this great single you've done, you've got a record deal, but no one you know, you didn't want to be embarrassed and say, oh, what happened to your record deal? And nothing happened. So it got to 100. And then it started moving up the charts and it got to like 55. In England, we had a program called Top of the Pops, which had a viewing. It was a program that had a viewership of something like 17 million, you know. And so if you could get on Top of the Pops would be your thing. But the criteria was you had to be in the top 30 to get onto Top of the Pops. Well, Musical Youth obviously couldn't get on Top of the Pops.
Top 40.
Top 40. No, it was a top 30 at the time. It changed to the top 40. So at the time, we were at 55. We were like, well, it's not going to happen. But you know what? We were still hoping and seeing what would happen. Anyways, to cut a long story short, the following week, it went from like 55 to 26. Now, when it got to 26, that was the first time you can appear on Top of the Pops. So at 26, we appeared on Top of the Pops. Well, all of a sudden now, it wasn't just these black kids from England, Birmingham, that were singing. It was like, whoa, we can actually see them. Yeah. So then the whole thing exploded now the following week. People went out and bought records like it was going out of fashion. I mean, it just moved. So it went from 26 to number one. Never happened. People were like, what is going on here? And as Denny said, in those days, it took 3 weeks in order for you to appear on, for us to appear on TV. So you want to take a story from there?
Only because of our age.
Yeah.
So the educational departments, we slipped underneath their radar until the single started flying up the charts.
Yeah.
And to be fair, when we were recording the first album, Youth of Today, and we were driving, we'd get picked up in the taxi from one side of London, and it would take that driver 2 hours to get us to the other side of London, to the studio. And when we were in the back of the taxi, the cab, we read in the papers that we were at number 7. So we thought, wow, number 7, that's not bad.
Exactly.
You know, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Anyway, we get to the studio about 10 o'clock. Yeah. About half an hour later, we get a call to say, listen, guys, you're at number 1. And at that time, you got to understand, Steve, is that the charts in England used to come out on a Tuesday afternoon. So they obviously counted up the sales from the weekend. Monday, they'd count up the sales and go, which one was selling the most on that weekend. We went, no, we're not. We're number 7. We've looked in the papers and that's what it says. So we believe that.
Actually.
Little did we know that they had insider knowledge.
Like all record companies do.
That this single is flying up the charts. And the A&R guy had to, in fact, who said he was going to batter him? Was it Patrick?
Me.
Was it you?
Yes.
So Michael says to him, his name was Charlie, he says, Charlie, if you're lying, we're going to batter you. That means we're going to beat you up. Anyway, he says, all right, then go and listen to the radio if you don't believe me. So we had to wait till 1 o'clock.
That's right, 1 o'clock.
For them to announce that we're at number 1.
Yeah.
Now, what was it like being on Top of the Pops? Because that's the biggest you can get. I mean, in England, that's the thing. I mean, everyone knows you're going to change. Everyone sits there, and you got to be nervous because, you know, the whole damn country's watching. It's not like now. Like, the whole country is watching you guys and your kids. And you probably didn't care because, you know, if it didn't work out, you'd be back at school. But what is it like? Were you nervous as hell? Were you like, oh, my God, we're going to be millions of people watching us?
I tell you, the truth of the matter is, it even transcended Top of the Pops. And the reason I'm saying this is because in those days, if you got a number 1 record, it was just a number 1 record. But because it was unprecedented what had happened, we actually made the news as well.
Okay.
So we weren't just on Top of the Pops now. So even if you weren't into music, you knew of Musical Youth because it was
all the
news.
Yeah.
So BBC didn't just you couldn't pay for this kind of promotion. You couldn't because, you know, we've got one national station, the BBC, at the time, and that would cover the whole country. So you've now got 70 million people watching you on Top of the Pops. But you've also now got the world kind of watching you because the BBC is a renowned broadcaster. So now it's big news that this band has got a number 1 single. And so now you can imagine, it's almost like the whole of England are now hearing about this band.
Yeah.
And so, at the time, looking back at it, it would have blown my mind. But at the time, we couldn't really comprehend what was going on.
No. I mean, to be honest, we didn't actually get to appear on Top of the Pops until late in the year because of we weren't allowed to work for more than 46 days of the year once the education department got involved. So our actual live first appearance was
Christmas,
the Christmas special.
Yeah.
And that was it. But then, obviously, more regular because the hits kept coming for the UK. Yeah. And we had the best time.
Yeah.
We had the best time.
Oh, my gosh.
I mean, if you're going on Top of the Pops, and plus, we didn't really have to perform live.
No.
I mean,
so wait, you guys, they have, are you in front of an audience? Because I know there was audience and there wasn't. There are two different versions. So you had an audience.
Yeah, there was an audience.
And so how many people are actually in there?
The audience was probably about 200 people, if that. Yeah.
Now, are they young girls because you're young guys, or are they older people? How do they get the crowd? How do they choose?
Well, they would apply they'd apply to the BBC, and the BBC would have an open forum, an open letting. So they'd let in X amount of people, and you could come in. Some people were there as part of the BBC's crew, in terms of not just the camera crew and the film crew, the camera crew, and the production team, but they were friends of friends. So whenever you saw the audience, it was a proper audience watching you perform the songs.
Yeah.
That's basically what it was. And they'd film it at the same time. And the BBC did it two ways. You either did it the exact time the day before, because it went out on a Thursday night.
Yeah.
Or you did it live on that night.
Yeah.
And the rehearsals was meticulous.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just down to the finest second.
Now tell me about the video, because that's when I found you. You know, America found you through MTV, and it was just said you're the first. You guys are before Michael Jackson and Prince for an African American band, and which is amazing to think that Prince. I mean, but it's just when you think about, and Prince was from America. But what was it when you guys? Because I know England was ahead of America in shooting videos. You guys, you guys were shooting England and the UK have been shooting videos forever for music. What was it like shooting the videos? Because it's the song. You probably no one's used to being on camera. I've been on a TV show. You're not used to the camera sticking in front of you. You have to stand on your little. They go, don't miss your spot. What was it like shooting the video? Was it a long day? Because usually the videos that could be like an 18-hour day. But your youth, so you probably couldn't work as long.
To be honest, Steve, it was a long day, but we never saw it as that. We never ever thought it, because we were mates, we were friends.
That's right.
Our best friends, and
someone says to hang out for the day with your friends. That's what you're doing.
And we're going to film it.
They're going to film it. Yeah.
I mean, what they used to make us. Don Letts, who was the director, we were comfortable with Don.
Yes.
So Don would just say to us, "Look, I need you to do this."
Yeah.
And if we had to do it again, because obviously, like recording, you have to go back and do it again because it doesn't look right. And back then, they didn't have digital editing. It was physical cut. So we had to keep doing parts, and Don got everything he needed. He had his script.
Yeah.
We didn't even have a dressing room. We didn't even have a toilet that we could go. We had to go to. We recorded the video in London on Lambeth Bridge next to Lambeth Palace. And you couldn't do that now. It was in the summer holiday. You couldn't do that now. So even the people on the bus who he filmed, that was all spontaneous. That was just people going past, and he filmed it. Yeah. And we had, luckily the weather was with us.
Yes.
So it wasn't raining.
That's right.
But no, we had the best time. We just had so much fun.
Yeah.
Because it was just,
an experience
it
for
was
life,
just, what was we expecting? We just did it.
Yeah.
And we'd worked with Don with a video before, so we knew Don. So that kind of helped. Yeah. And everybody understood. Nobody ever stood there going, why do we have to do this? Why do we have to do this? We just got on with it.
Yeah.
So you're on Top of the Top of the Pops. You have a number one song. Your videos are on. How is that changing your life? Because you're young kids. I mean, I'm sure you're sitting there. It's not like if you're 20, you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to get laid every night. You're still young kids.
Okay. So what happened? Okay, so one experience I and my parents had personally was when now we are at number one. Now, I'm not at home at the time, but this is the story from my parents. All those kids that we had invited to the audition turned up at my parents' house. So telling my mum and my dad, look, John was sick that day. and Trevor couldn't make it, and now they're available. So when's the next audition? The audition, because we know that we can do better than Dennis and all of the others. So this is what they're telling my parents. And my parents are like, the audition is gone. The band is gone. It's already been made. No, it's not made. No, I'm telling you, because my son can sing and my daughter can sing. And the reason they didn't turn up, honestly, all of these ridiculous excuses are now knocking on my parents' door. And my parents are trying to explain to them, look, it's finished, it's done. No. And they were literally arguing with my parents, telling my parents that they need to be in the band. And my parents like, there's nothing you can do. So that's how it changed from all of a sudden having nobody turn up to everybody now wanting to be part of musical youth. That's the experience I had. I'm sure Dennis will tell you now his experience of our stories.
The experience for me was basically all our friends knowing, and then going back to school. Mm-hmm. And after about 3 weeks, because we were recording the first album, we were out of that bubble of school. We were in the bubble of the limelight of the press, but only to a certain point. I mean, now it would just be madness, you know. And we just had to take it in our stride. It wasn't something we planned for. And my experience is that the record company probably had the cheapest #1 party ever. Yeah. So they didn't have to get no drink. They didn't have to get no girls. They didn't get no drugs. We had Kentucky, McDonald's, lots of Coke and Fanta and apple pies. Yeah. And that was our parties. And we had to be off stage by 10:30.
Yeah. But didn't you start getting recognized by people when you're walking down the street? Because video is such a strong power. I mean, and once again, it must be overwhelming for someone young because, you know, people are coming up to you and you're like, well, I'm not supposed to talk to strangers. Who's this person talking to me? How did you guys deal with that? Because it's something that youth doesn't deal with usually.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, we supported each other in so much as when we went back to school, that was the level of all us. That was the base point. Our school friends, you know, kids don't care. You know, they ever get on with you or they don't. And some of them will take the proverbial, mm-hmm. as they say, take the mick, as we call it, mm-hmm. and say, your band's rubbish, blah, blah, blah. Others were like, wow, this is just blowing my mind. Yeah. And we actually decided as a band not to lord it over our friends. Yeah. In terms of, look what we're doing, look at us, we're going here. They'd actually have to read in the magazines, the music magazines, of where we'd been that previous weekend. Yeah. I remember one of my friends going, was you in France at the weekend? Yeah. Why didn't you tell us? Yeah. Well, you know. Most people are going to go to the park and kick a ball on a weekend. We were going up there all over Europe, you know, and sometimes the Middle East, the Far East, or whatever. Yeah. So our life was just completely changed, and it was so different. And how do you say to someone who's going to kick a ball in the local park on a weekend, well, I'm actually going to France? Yeah, I'm going here. It's unbelievable. And so I'm flying first class.
Yeah, and that too. And then we're going to hang out at Michael Jackson's house, or we're performing with Stevie Wonder, or, you know, these Donna Summer as well. I mean, I can name all these name dropping, and it's not that I'm trying to, you know, load it over. And you can't tell people that, because most of the time, you know, if they're in a band, they're going to play at the local pub, where we'll be playing at an amphitheater in Los Angeles somewhere. You couldn't, how do you know, square that with them and, you know, try to say we know.
So you just had to be yourself. That's all you had to be.
Well, what was it like for you being in front of these bigger audiences? I mean, you go from playing, you know, a gay club at Boy George to all of a sudden playing. I mean, it has to be intimidating, because I know you don't see all the faces, but you're going out there. I'm sure the energy. But what is that like? Like the first time you guys start hitting the stage and there's a bunch of people cheering for you, and I'm sure as soon as you do past the Dutchie, the place goes nuts. I mean, how do you keep focused? Because older people get intimidated when that shit happens. For younger people, it must be very odd.
No, to be fair, Steve, I mean, we practice 7 days a week. You know, going to perform was the least of our worries. You know, because we knew what we were doing in terms of the music. Yeah. You know, when I say we practice 7 days a week, we practice 7 days a week. Yeah. Partly because I had to catch up. Yeah. I had 16, 15 months of catching up to do. And then partly because that's what we love doing. We love practicing because that's where we could make our mistakes.
In fact, the funny thing is, we were rehearsing downstairs, and Black Sabbath were rehearsing upstairs. So Andy was upstairs rehearsing, and we were downstairs rehearsing because we shared the same rehearsal building in Birmingham.
Yeah. So
now, what was expected of you when the second album came out?
Ooh. Okay, so what you've got to deal with here, Steve, is they all talk about it, the second album syndrome. I mean, only experience has told me that your first album is a lifetime's work. The second album and any album preceding that is what's happened in your life since the success of the first album. And I think a couple of things. Firstly, the genre of music. You know, we just lost the king of reggae music, Bob Marley. The genre of reggae music around the world was popular to a point. And Bob Marley was the king of reggae music. Everybody else was coming in the poor second, third, fourth, or fifth. We've now crashed that party, you know, and I saw things in the press, a novelty band. We never saw that. We just saw ourselves as a reggae band, and that was it, a reggae band. So the record company, because it took them by so much surprise, and it was such a massive success, that they're trying to commercialize it to a point where we almost lost ourselves with some of the music. It was us performing, but the control in terms of what songs were being performed was kind of out of our hands.
Totally out of our hands.
But then us being...
we were so young at the time.
We were inexperienced. I shouldn't say we all...
We had no sense. We had no say.
Inexperienced.
No say.
Inexperienced. Inexperienced musicians.
Yeah.
Inexperienced management.
Yes.
That's part of it. But still, looking at the second album, I'm still proud of that second album because there's some monster musicians on that second album. There's Hawk Orlinsky, who played with Rufus and Shaka Khan.
Yes.
Who played with Rufus. Right. Yeah, he wrote Ain't Nobody. Yeah. There's Wah Watson, you know, who was Shaft, the guitarist for Shaft. There's the Seawind Horns. There's Donna Summer.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
How did you end up with Donna Summer? Because, you know, she at the time... And well, she's a legend. And you know, when disco blew up in America, everyone knew Donna Summer, man. It was like, you know, talking about the hot stuff. But how did you guys end up? How did that happen? Because that's just something that's random. Because you have a number one hit, but you're young kids still. You're coming from reggae. She's coming from disco. How did that whole thing happen?
So what happened was, obviously, we've done Saturday Night Live by now.
What was that like for you guys? Because
Saturday Night Live was just a blast.
Tell me your story from that, because I always wonder what it's like to do SNL.
Right. So Saturday Night Live, right? We listen to us. We've just come in from recording 2 videos in Jamaica in February in the hot baking sun. Yeah. We've now gone to New York, -8. So we've gone from the oven to the freezer. Yeah. And We've done the MTV, not realizing what's gone on, because we actually went into the studios, not realizing that we were going to be, in hindsight, we were the first black artist to appear on MTV in an interview. So then when we do Saturday Night Live, we love playing live. So for us, this is not a problem. Remember, we rehearse 7 days a week.
Yes.
We've been playing this stuff for the last 2 years.
Yeah, easily.
Solid.
Yeah.
We'd even done the Montreux Jazz Festival, which was the biggest jazz festival in the world at the time. We headlined that. And we get to Saturday Night Live. Joan Rivers is presenting. We don't realize how big this show is. Because remember, our pinnacle was Top of the Pops. So anything else after that is like, just another TV show. Anyway, so Joan Rivers is presenting. She was beautiful. She was lovely to us. So we do Saturday Night Live. And backstage, we had this video game. Bloop, bloop, bloop. You remember it? I know. Pop, that's it.
That's the one. Yeah.
And we finished doing the show, and we're all backstage, and we're playing this game. Gene Simmons comes into our dressing room. Right? Yeah. And he goes, and our tour manager goes, "Look, guys, it's Gene." And we looked at it. "Hi, Gene." And just carry on playing our game. Just totally ignored him. It's not like we could go and hang out with him because we could go out partying with him. What? Yes. We're going to a club? Yeah. Bring us along. Where's their ID? Exactly. So we could not go to any clubs or nothing like that. So our crew absolutely loved it because they'd be finished by 10:30. Off they went partying. Yeah. Yeah, but that's Saturday Night Live.
So your Saturday Night Live led you because you're on that. So back to Donna Summers.
Yes. We're gonna go back to Donna Summer. So we did. We were out doing a film out in LA here, and our manager got the call to say Donna Summer wants to record with the band, but the manager didn't believe it was Donna Summer, so he put the phone down, and they phoned back again and said, "Look, no, we're very serious. Yeah, Donna wants to record a single," and so when it all came together, we were flying back to get back to school. Yes. So we'd flown out to LA on the Thursday. We were supposed to shoot the film on the Friday. Yeah. We met Mr. T. Yes. And then what they did was we flew from LA to New York, Hit Factory Studios, right. Went and met Michael O'Martin at the studio. Yeah. He told us about the song. Yeah. Recorded the backing vocals. Yeah. Recorded our vocals, and when I did my lead and the backing vocals. And then literally left the studio and went straight to the airport to catch our flight back to the UK so we could get back to school on the Monday. And we left it at that. Yeah. And then we got that's basically how we got to record with Donna. She never recorded in the studio with us. No. But then when she come to do the video, she flew over and we met her then.
Now, you had mentioned, and I know Stevie Wonder and Eddie Grant had both written songs for your band. How does that? I mean, that's like, man, Stevie Wonder is a god. Like, what is that? I mean, were you guys aware how big Stevie Wonder is? I mean, because in America, like the songs that one, I mean, he was just so big, and growing up and following music. But how did that happen? And were you guys like, holy shit, Stevie Wonder is writing a song for us?
So here's what happened. When we came over, we went and did an interview with at his radio station called KJLH. We were recording the second album at the time. And the lady who was there in the press for his station said, "Look, Stevie's in town. Do you want to meet him?" And we looked at each other, what? Who wouldn't want to meet Stevie Wonder? Exactly. And obviously him being 12 when he started, and we were young when we started, it all kind of synced. Yeah. And she said, "No problem. Once he's in the studio, we'll phone you." We got the phone call at 3:00 in the morning. Steve is in the studio. You need to come down. So they had to wake us up and take us down to the studio. Yeah. So when we get down there, Stevie hasn't arrived yet, but we're waiting there and we're all talking. Stevie turns up, and from that moment, we've been friends ever since. He's introduced to all of us, and he's listening to us talk because obviously he knows we're all black, but he's trying to work out the accent because that's what Steve listens for. He listens for the accent, and he's just listening and listening. And he says to me, "Oh, I've written a song for you. If Dennis can beat me at air hockey, I'll give you the song." And I never beat him, but he said, "I'll give you the song anyway." A blind man beat me at air hockey. Yeah. So it was, So we had a fantastic time with Steve.
And then how about Eddie Grant? Because Eddie Grant was huge with Electric Avenue. I mean, everyone remembers that song.
That's right. But Eddie Grant was basically, that was supposed to be a match made in heaven. Yeah. Because Eddie started off in the 60s. Yeah. And he was an adult. He was in early 20s. That's right. Late teens, early 20s when he had his first success. But then, you're right, Electric Avenue was massive here. And somebody said, for the third album, somebody said, "Well, why don't you get Eddie to produce it?" Yeah. So we went out to Barbados and recorded some songs, which Eddie wrote and produced, even though we'd written our own, and it just never worked out.
It was one of those things that just, you try and think that a combination would work, but it just never did. Didn't work at all. His idea of what we should be doing and ours were just completely different. And so the whole thing to me was, if I'm going to be honest, it was a disaster. That's the best way I'll put it. I mean, from looking back at it, at the time, you're going to call it experience, whatever. But if I, as a 54-year-old guy looking back at my career, that was not a good move because we just didn't gel. Do you know what I'm saying?
It could have been a good move. But I think Eddie just wanted to control it all.
Yeah.
Not give us any input.
Yeah.
And that kind of, how do we feel? I mean, I'm now 17, 18, and you know, at 17, you know it all, don't you?
Yeah.
You know everything. And at 15, he knows everything.
I know even more than a 17-year-old.
And it wasn't so much that we didn't enjoy working with Eddie. It just wasn't our music.
Yeah. Yeah.
We knew our music.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's one thing we knew,
yeah,
we knew our music. So when you hear the first album, Youth of Today, Never Gonna Give You Up,
yeah,
you know, Heartbreaker, Blind Boy, Mirror Mirror,
yeah,
Children of Zion, that's us.
Yeah.
You know, Air Taxi,
yeah,
you know, oh, that's us. That's you know, so you can't hold that back.
Yeah.
And
I think if we had done songs from Eddie, if we had done things like Living on the Front Line, that would have been closer to musical youth sound than Let's Go to the Moon, which is what he gave us. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? If he had done us, we had done things like Hope Joanna would have been good for musical youth because that was the kind of way we were going. But he gave us songs like, as I said, Let's Go to the Moon, which was complete and utter.
No, it was just formulated.
That's what I'm saying.
It wasn't reggae.
It wasn't reggae.
For us.
No, definitely not for us. And so it was a complete disaster. And that's why I'm looking at it now. At the time, you are just chalking up to experience, but yeah, it didn't work.
So what happened? Why'd you guys are young. Why'd you break up? I mean, is it one thing? Well, you're young, and everyone forgets that. You know, bands. I talked to bands who've been together for 10 years. You know, popular. They're older guys, and they get on each other's nerves, and even though they're friends. But for you, you're young, and it's like all of a sudden, you know, you're 17, 18. There's a 15-year-old. Well, you know, if you want to go hit on girls, you want to hit on 17 and 18-year-olds, not 15-year-olds. I mean, you might want to hit on 15-year-olds as long as you're under 17, it's legal. But no, what happened? What happened to musical youth?
Number of things.
A lot of things. You go first.
So, I turned 18 and I saw all this success, but I was still not happy.
Yeah.
I became a Christian. So that's the first thing that happened for me. So it all changed. So where musical youth was my be all and end all, it was now not that be all and end all. Not that I didn't love the guys. I always wanted to play. I never wanted to go anywhere without Michael Jr., Patrick and Calvin. But then outside influences, and as I said, I've said it before, it was immature management. We didn't really, if anybody would have said to us, listen guys, you need to have a break. You know, you've been in each other's pockets for the last 3.5, 4 years, and you need to have a break from each other just to reevaluate.
Yeah, just a holiday, because remember, as Dennis said, we were practicing 7 days a week. So I was seeing Dennis every single day. And he obviously, like anything else, I don't know anybody that you can see every day for, 3 years. You're not going to get fed up of, vice versa. And so when Dennis left, the band then was left with 4 of us. And Patrick and Junior had drug problems anyways and mental health problems. And now we're seeing it now. And all those things could have been resolved because you see, Prince Harry now talking about mental health and Prince William talking about mental health. And it's a big word now. But at the time, no one knew about your mental health. So, I've got my kids now, and I am careful of what they do. I'm worried about their mental health, and I do stuff that makes sure that they're okay. I speak to them, and I give them a break. So even though they go to school every day, I make sure they have holidays. I make sure there are times where I'm like, you know what? If you're not feeling it today, we ain't going to do it. You're going to spend a home day, stop with me, whatever. It is important to do. At the time, there was none of that. And everybody that was involved with musical youth didn't care about Dennis or Michael. They just cared about how much money they were making. So your mental health, to hell with that. You better carry on performing, carry on living together, And so when Dennis left, honestly, it was almost like a breath of fresh air because I was like, a day I'm not seeing Dennis. But unfortunately, what I didn't realize that it was going to take about 10 years since I'd see him next. No. And so I didn't see him or speak to him. And he went up and did his thing, which was fine. And I went up and did my thing. And the sad thing was, if I'd only known then what I knew now, I said, you know what, Dennis, you're right. Go away for a year, or I'll go away for 6 months or whatever. And let's meet up and let's do this again. But the management didn't give us that option. The record companies didn't give us that option. No one gave us that option because no one cared about us. All they cared about was the bottom line.
Yeah.
The record companies were caring about how much money they're making. Okay, we'll move on to the next act. There was no love for the band. So that's
No, I
basically
mean,
the
to be
end of
fair, if you look at it now, Music Youth was a massive success.
Yes.
We didn't realise how big it was amongst ourselves. Not only that, it was a massive financial success for the record company.
Yeah.
We were probably one of the only artists in the 80s who were in the black with the record company because it was a cheap band.
Yeah.
It was a cheap band. You know, the advance wasn't a great deal, even though at the time it would have seemed like a big punt. The single just paid for everything.
Yeah.
You know, still pays for things now.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that.
Yeah.
And then management being immature, record company dropping us as a label. The label let us go.
Yeah.
So that put us on a backward step. And we weren't looking for the next hit. We just wanted to be, and when I say hit song, I should explain myself more. Hit song. We just wanted to perform.
Yeah.
And because of the ages,
Yeah.
you know, Michael being 15, Calvin being now 13, we couldn't tour as much as everybody else.
That's right.
So we remember there was 4 to 6 days that we had to work. That's not even once a week. We actually discussed moving out, emigrating here, to be able to perform more. And
now you remember Universal at the time, or MCA, they have an artist roster so big. So we could have been on any one of those supports. So we could have kept it going, which would have been easy to do. We've got no responsibilities, no family, no kids or whatever. So we could have done that. But unfortunately, the record companies weren't looking out for us. They're looking out for themselves. And that's what I go back to. Because that's what, if that was, today, if that's Olivia Rodriguez or any of these other entertainers, they'd be like, okay, fine, you're going to be supporting Taylor Swift. You're going to be supporting whomever. Yeah. And you can put them on those tours and continue to, grow the act. We never had that opportunity because, as I said, to go back to the management, weren't clever enough. And the record company weren't clever enough.
I mean, so we're talking about the head of MCA at the time was Irving Azoff.
Yeah. Right.
Now, who doesn't know Irving Azoff? We went to the Grammys and we're sitting next to Irving and Don King. And Don King had just signed the Jacksons to the Victory Tour, and all the music promoters in this country were up in arms because the boxing promoters got the biggest black artist ever with Michael and the Jackson 5, and they're like, "How did this happen?" Well, there's a guy there called Irving Azoff that made that happen, because I don't think Don King could have dealt with that.
I got a question for you, Dennis. What made you find Christianity at 18?
Firstly, my older brother. That was firstly. He got saved at a Billy Graham revival meeting at Villa Park. And then he encouraged me. There's more to life than this, and I think that's what probably saved me. To say I got saved. If it wasn't for the Lord Jesus Christ, maybe I might not be here. I can't guarantee it, but I might not have been in this state of mind in terms of what Michael says, mental health, because I was focusing on something else now, not just this. So when I made my decision to step away from the band, it wasn't about the money, because I didn't, that was my only income stream. If you look at it and you're talking profession, if I'm talking to my kids now, you're going to leave that. That's your only income stream. What are you going to do for a living? How are you going to eat? My mum was a single parent, and she worked nights cleaning trains. So she didn't have. I couldn't rely on my mum. My mum. When I say I couldn't rely on my mum for that support, my mum gave me the physical support, the emotional support. As long as I was happy, that was my mum. I don't care what you do, as long as you're happy. But you're not going to be in this house doing nothing. And then my brother wouldn't allow it, and my family wouldn't allow it. So, and I think Michael's exactly the same as me.
That's right, exactly the same. So again, one of the things that I found striking was when Musical Youth had ended and Dennis had left, somebody, and I've forgotten what the article was in the newspaper wrote, Michael Grant is a has-been. And I'm thinking, I'm 16 years old, and I'm a has-been, my career's over. And bearing in mind, a lot of these, you're just leaving school now in England at the time. High school.
No, it's a junior high.
Junior high here.
Yeah.
So you're just leaving, so you could go on to university, whatever. And they're telling me, your career's over, that's it, your life's over at 16. And all of that, we go back to this mental health I'm talking about. Imagine what that does to you. when everyone else, your kids, your family and your friends and all that, are now saying, oh, what is our career going to be? Are we going to be a plumber, electrician, or whatever we're going to do in life? And then they look at you and say, no, sorry, your career's over. You're done. That's it. You know, and they don't realize that that affected me in a way that I'm looking back now. And it just made me feel like, oh, my God, well, what do I do now? And that was the problem. We talk about, as I said, mental health now. And so it was really tough then. And so I went off and did all kinds of different odd jobs here, odd jobs there, because no one told me that I could stay in the music industry. And the music industry didn't help me get back in. And I met a friend of mine now called Tony Bean, and he was the one then that introduced me to God. And also, he was like a mentor and tried to get me to think differently. And he's still my friend now to this day. You know, we're still great friends. And in fact, I'm the godfather to his 2 kids. But the point I'm saying is that that's what saved me. Somebody coming in and saying, look, there is more to life than music. There is more to life than, you know, just you. There's an existence, there's God. And that saved me. And I wish I could express that to the other members of the band, because at the time we all went off and did our own thing. And fortunately, tragedy stopped 2 members, Patrick and Junior. Sorry. And then that, looking back at it again, as I said, it was just no guidance and no one caring enough to say, hey, listen, guys, let's go down this path. We can help you.
Now, what made you, after all that you went through, what made you guys eventually get back together?
Honestly?
Yeah, money?
No. I decided that the solo career that I had was so low you couldn't hear it. So I went back to Birmingham and put a band together, and I called it XNY. And I kept saying to Michael, listen, you know, come and join the band, and you know, see how you feel about it, and just come and play with the band. And this went on for about 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
Just come and play. Just come and play. So one day he says, okay, then comes to rehearsals. We do a set.
Yeah.
Michael's text. To be fair, is like when you practiced as much as we practiced, coming to play your own songs is like nothing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like water off a duck's back. Absolutely. It's second nature. So then we go down to a gig in Guernsey. And we do the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And we finish the weekend, and I go to Michael, here's your money. And he looks at me and goes, what?
Yeah.
here's your money. What? I got paid.
Yeah.
Because we never used to see money after the gigs.
Never got paid. I did tours all over the world. Never got paid. You know, never seen a penny.
Anyway, so that was just the basic economics. And Michael says, wow, I'm coming back. Yeah. So that's basically what happened, you know.
Well, now you're on the Lost 80s Live. Now, how did that come about? Because that's a great show. I went to one. They never come on the East Coast. Before the pandemic, I went to one in Philly. And it was great because there's a bunch of bands, all been on my show, but they're just songs we remember. And it's such, the 80s have such a special part. I went to a college reunion a while ago. Everyone's like, oh, the 80s, the 80s, the 80s. And I always say the 80s were great. It was a very great part of my life. I don't want to go back there. Like some people, like the only reason maybe if I'm bald now, so I go back and get my hair. But I don't want to sit there. And it was a great part. But they were such a influential, I'd say, to me growing up and who I am. So when Lost 80s came along, did you guys just jump on it? Were you excited, or how did they find you, and what happened?
Well, so there's a guy that's a friend of mine named Dave. Firstly, what happened was I got a contact from a guy named Dave Salas, and I went and did it. Michael had just moved to Canada at the time, so he couldn't travel anywhere because he had to stay.
Yeah.
And I went and did it was called the Great American Smokeout Festival in 2018 with Snoop. So it's 25 years of the Great American Smokeout Festival. And I went and did this. I went and did Dutchie. I did a half, of course, you know, got a pickup band, got another keyboard player with me. And then I got a call from Dave again saying, look, this guy's got this production called Lost 80s Live. Would you be interested in doing it? Now, I'd already started on the 80s circuit in England, you know, because it's a big thing in the UK and Europe and Australia. But they didn't usually call us. They didn't have reggae bands on, even though some of the reggae bands that, you know, very successful, they didn't call us. And I just started doing them, and I thought, why not? So come out. And I did, the first time I came out was 2019 and did 3 shows and had the best time because I knew the format, you know, and a lot of the artists that are on there are either English expatriates or they've flown over from England. So the likes of Flock of Seagulls, they're from the northwest, that's Liverpool. Then you got Wang Chung, again from the north, you know, Bow Wow Wow, you know, Annabella's from London. So, and then on this one, we got, last year I was supposed to do it, but there's complications with health and stuff. So the beat was it's the English beat here. So Dave Wakeling, he's from Birmingham. So I was so, yeah, because the first time I went to a live gig, it was seeing Musical Youth supporting the beat in England. So, you know, just to see Dave. And the last time I saw Dave, I was actually here when I was 21, because I lived in Los Angeles when I was 20, spent my 21st birthday up there in La Brea, La Cienega and La Brea at the Franklin Hotel,
okay,
where all the musicians came in. And I saw Dave, and I haven't seen him since. So it's kind of, wow. So that's how the Lost 80s came about. So Rob Juarez, who runs Lost 80s Live, he said, look, I'm doing my last one next year. This is this one. You know, I really want you on it. So this has been in the planning for the last year, you know, because trying to get visas and your government is not easy.
No.
Now, is this your first one, Michael, of the Lost 80s?
Yes, it's my first one. And I hope it's not my last one. So I'm hoping that we can find another promoter that can do something.
To be fair, we only ever did shows as Musical Youth, the original 5. We did shows in New York, and we always used to do, Stephen, this never used to happen for other artists. We used to do a matinee show for the under 16s or under 18s, and we used to do another show on the evening for the older people. So we used to do 2 shows in one day. I never know how much we got.
Probably not that nothing.
Now, this may sound like a weird question. You're older now. Your voices are different. How do you adjust? Like, because, you know, do you sit there and say, I'm going to try to hit a certain note that it's hard, or do you just say, I'm going to sing, and how would they don't like it? You love the song. Because I saw, what's his name? No. Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley said, my voice may sound different, but I'm 70 now. He goes, I'm not going to sound like I was 38. But how do you do it?
I was lucky because my voice broke at 14. So when I recorded the single, my voice had already broken. So I still sing the songs in the original keys that they're in. Yeah. The only part I don't do really now is Calvin's part, which I can do Calvin's part, but it doesn't sound like Calvin. So we've just added a little production thing that we can, you know, make it work. And it does work when we play live. Well,
and also, I'm playing keyboards. So piano's going to change. You know, I'm lucky I can play the same key, the same notes from now until eternity.
Now, this is for Dennis, because you've done the last Lost 80s. What is it like when you see all these people? They know the words. It's been since 82. They still remember you. So it has to make you feel amazing because you've made a difference. There's people who have memories. I remember from playing basketball in St. Patrick's Dutchie. I remember seeing the video, and we would dance, and something like a bunch of white kids from New Jersey dancing to reggae. Okay, you haven't seen anything till you've seen that. But what is it? What goes through your mind when you look into the crowd and you see all these people and they're jiving, they're with you?
It's the best thing, because it takes them back. It's something somebody told me about recording. What they said to me was, you're actually capturing time. You're capturing time, and it's not a visual thing. It's just you're plucking it out of the air and you're just capturing them. As soon as they hear this generation, everybody goes absolute nuts. And in the UK, we've got a video show that we run with the songs now. Because I decided, you know what, it's about time we actually showed the videos. Yeah. And I can look, like when the videos come up, I can tell when people go, because there's me at 15, there's me at 55, 56. And I actually say to them, before, after, That's how you'll end up if you do what I do. But luckily for me, as I said, it's the most fun, because people just lose it. Don't know why they lose it, and these are adults, These are highly paid professionals, some of them, So it's a blast.
I think so too, and what I find humbling though is that, without being disrespectful to anybody, is that here's these 5 kids from Birmingham, England, and to have made an impact like we did. So someone like yourself can say, you know what, I know that song. You're living on the other side of the world. You're living on, there's an ocean between us, and here I am today. And you're saying, yeah, when that song came out, I know it. Millions and millions of songs have been released. Billions maybe have been released since time began. So for me to have had a song where, it had such an impact, because as you know, songs are released all the time by famous people that, and some of them never make it. So to be able to say, I've done something on the planet where the local guy in a grocery store, you can go up to him and say, do you know Michael Grant? And he'll say no. But if you say, have you heard the song Pastor Dutchie? 9 times out of 10, he'll say, yeah, I remember that song. If they're of a certain age, that's what I'm saying.
Well, hold on a minute. Because now we've got Stranger Things.
Yeah. So do you get what I'm saying? So all of a sudden, people are like, I know that song. I grew up on that song. And the phenomenon that's happened for me is humbling. So as I said, just somebody in a local grocery store or somebody that's a DJ like yourself, to know and say, hey, you know what? I know that band, and I know where I was and what I was doing. You were playing basketball, and so you've got a history with that song. I'm totally humbled, because when we were doing it at the time, we never thought someone like yourself on the other side would say, yeah, at the time that song came out, I was playing basketball, and then this guy wouldn't pass the ball, and we would say, pass the ball, pass the Dutchie. That's what I'm saying. That you got a story, and that's humbling. Because, that to me is the greatest thing that could have ever happened, and the most humbling thing, that you can have a story with this song that was written in another country and by another time with another genre of music. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Well, I got one final question. For each of you, answer it separately. We'll start with you, Michael. In your time with Musical Youth, what would you say, the highlight of your career with Musical Youth?
Oh my gosh. I think, honestly, the highlight is now, believe it or not, because of all the things that have happened. If you had said to me, and this is the thing, is why it's the highlight now. At the time, I remember doing Pastor Dutchie with Dave in the studio. And if you had said to me, Michael, 40 years later, you're going to be sitting with your best friend doing this, I would have, I'd have given you my right hand and maybe a couple of my left toes. Seriously. I don't give you one of them, because I still want to walk. But the point is, can you imagine you saying to somebody, or me saying to you, 40 years later, you're still going to be hanging out doing this song with your friend? Who wouldn't take that? Who wouldn't take that as a highlight? Yes, meeting Michael Jackson. Yes, Stevie Wonder. Yeah, going to the famous places, meeting all these famous people, eating all of this great food is great. And those are the highlights. But humbly, I'm saying, just hanging out with my mate who I'd went to school with. It's almost like, people always say, you never marry the first person you're with, because they'll change, and you move on. So you're never dating school, you wait until you get a bit older. But it's like a school romance that's continuing to this day. And I'm loving it. So yeah, the highlight is today, I'm still doing this with my best mate. That's for me.
And how about you, Dennis?
For me, I think the Grammy Awards is the one for me. Because to say that you've been on that red carpet, and also you think of the genre of music that we performed. Reggae wasn't known then. It was known to a point. They never even had a section in the Grammys for reggae. That's that. And you think about, the Grammy Awards in terms of world music and your pinnacle. There's certain artists across the UK who've never even been nominated for a Grammy, but they've had a great career.
Yeah.
But if I can actually say Grammy nominated, where they can't. And then, as Michael said, I'm still here performing, and it's still not the be-all and end-all of life, but it's still the best.
Oh, God, yeah.
Still the best.
Yeah, we're both family men, we're both married, kids, whatever. but to able to say, you know what, this is my best friend that I had from school. Because, you know, a lot of people come and go. I'm sure you've had loads of friends like I have that you don't see anymore, you don't hear from anymore, whatever. But to say, you know what, me and this guy grew up together and we're still here today, what more could you want out of life?
We grew up on TV.
Exactly.
You know, guys, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This was great. People, go check them out. Go check out Musical. The Lost 80s Live. You can go to lost80slive.com. They have a bunch of shows coming up. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 965 episodes. You can email me at coopertalk.net. Twitter at CooperTalk, Instagram at CooperTalk1. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you next time.
Yeah.